Here looking at this French news agency headline, mystery illness plagues girls in Colombia. And then it links right in with saying the parents say it's after a vaccine program. And they collapse and they start having convulsions. I mean, it's the same story over and over again. What was the headline just Monday? Vaccine deaths in Syria. I mean, it's just crazy. Then they go safe and effective, no adverse reactions in the vaccine program here in the U.S. We're just good about when our kids have convulsions and blood comes out their nose or whatever, and they never talk again. And the doctor just tells us that they don't know why. And then, or maybe they call the cops on you and say, you beat your kid. Then they get somebody else they can throw in the system. I mean, here in America, we put up with this. They have banned Gardasil in European countries, in Japan, in India, within a year of it being introduced 8 years ago. But here in America, oh, they're banning GMO, and they're pulling it out of the McDonald's food in South Africa, but not here. They're banning it all over the world, but not here. Not here. And that's why we lead the pack in obesity and neurological disorders and so much more. And I'm not being negative. The good news is we know what's going on. You don't want to walk around out in the field or the desert in the middle of the night. You'll step in a hole and break your leg. I've always used that analogy. And then I was out in Big Bend and wanted to cut across the parking lot to get back to the lodge. And my friend said, there might be snakes out there. And I go, it looks pretty flat. And I'm walking along in some scrub brush and stepped right into a 3-foot hole and blew out half of my Achilles. And may have to have surgery. 8 months ago, 7 months ago. I got a pimp walk, though, now. Literally. And what if there had been floodlights, I'd have seen that hole. Must have been where an old telephone pole or light or something was. It was a pretty big, perfectly round hole right there in the dark in grass. Just ought to fill that thing. But that's what I'm here doing, is trying to put light on things so we can see all these holes so we don't step in them and break our ankle or break our foot or break our Achilles. Or walk into an old well. They're supposed to fill old wells or put grates over them. People die all the time out in the night, walk around a field, fall in a well. My dad was playing around one when he was a kid and fell in it. It's only like 20 feet, he climbed out. But this is what we're dealing with. And so I can't just emotionally say, I'm for Scottish independence. I have to go back and say, well, there's other tyranny that's going to come in, and these are socialists that are running this, so it may just be a deal to loot Scotland even faster than the UK would. But it's all tentacles of the same monster, and the tentacles kind of compete with each other when they're shooting out there grabbing things, but whatever they grab still goes in the same mouth. And so you'll have them fighting with each other over a piece of something. There's a competition to the New World Order's criminal activities. I want to get some final words on this from Paul Watson, then we're going to shift gears into other news. Paul, go back into your article because you got cut off earlier about what the Russians are saying and any other points that are important about this historic no vote on leaving Her Britannic Majesty's kingdom. And we have the image up there that Kurt Nimmo put together of the Queen of England and a famous quote by Cecil Rhodes that's public. Why should we not form a secret society with but one object, the furtherance of the British Empire and the bringing of the whole world under British rule? And that's the guy that set up Oppenheimer, De Beers, and set up the Council on Foreign Relations and publicly wrote multiple books that I've personally read that you can buy that are available at libraries describing the entire world government plan, the 10 kingdoms, the 3 super regions, the eugenics-based program around it. It's incredible information. Infowars.com right now. Going back to Paul Watson, final comments.
Yeah, there are several remarks made by these Russian election observers. One's reported in Newsweek. That was the one who said the ballots were basically lying around, no security whatsoever. Then there's Georgy Fyodorov, who told RIA Novosti, and he's part of one of Russia's top election observer groups. And again, we're not pretending that they're neutral, but it's still interesting to hear what they had to say about the referendum vote. And he said, quote, according to what our observers at the polling offices tell us, there were more yes votes during the vote count. He also said, Scotland found itself under immense pressure. Those on the UK side campaigning for a no vote resorted to every violation imaginable, and his comments are backed up by Igor Morozov, who also pointed to the intense propaganda campaign on behalf of Westminster that preceded the vote in the week before, and definitely said that that had an impact. So, you know, so far there are these sporadic cases of vote fraud that were allegedly caught on video. We've got those in the article as well. So we'll continue to watch it. I mean, we know the police are investigating cases of vote fraud in Glasgow, and there were ballots sent out to 3-year-old children weeks before the vote took place. So they're obviously illegal ballots being submitted as votes. So we'll continue to track it, but definitely a lot of questions being asked at the moment.
Paul, what else are you keeping your eyes on? We've seen this Alibaba IPO come out threatening, quote, U.S. dominance of tech stocks. The whole establishment world has always planned to suck the West dry and then leverage that into investments to dominate Asia, particularly China. But China is also teetering on collapse because of the inequities and the corruption, not inequities that communism didn't deliver. It delivered total tyranny, but the new inequities that they allow a superclass to engage in free market activity while keeping a giant underclass as slaves. Thousands of riots per month in China. But it shows the globalist worldview of, like, locust eating us to the bone, or piranha, and then moving on to the next phase.
Yeah, but I think there's a definite split that took place. In fact, a couple of months ago, you had one of the top people out of these elite organizations, I forget which one it was, but he basically said that, I think it was the former US ambassador to Russia, who said, Russia is no longer part of the New World Order. They have betrayed us. And now you see they're setting up this anti-IMF dollar system, anti-dollar system. They're setting up their own internet with China and Brazil. And basically the BRICS nations are building this multipolar alternative world system, which is a direct threat to the unipolar New World Order that's being built by the US, the EU, and NATO. So I definitely see a split. I mean, you had a top Chinese PLA professor come out earlier this week and say that they're preparing for a world war. They know where this is heading, that they're going to get ready in terms of sea battles and territory battles. So China is preparing for a world war. We know Russia recently revised its military doctrine to treat NATO as an enemy, to authorize a preemptive nuclear strike on NATO countries. So it definitely seems like there's been a split over the past couple of years, of course, centering around Ukraine. So it definitely seems to have changed in that way. And then in terms of the grassroots stuff, of course, you had Brzezinski saying there's a global political awakening. So change and revolt is in the air, but they're trying to steer it towards their own ends. We saw they hijacked the Arab Spring. Obviously, in the case of Scottish independence, that wasn't a purely freedom-orientated movement. It was driven largely by the socialist SNP. So revolt is coming, change is coming. It's just who drives it, who diverts it, who gets control of the reins.
And then we have Newt Gingrich and others saying that the American people are really mad at the government, the establishment better do something. This is as he and others push the same agenda. Look at John Boehner with Obama funding Obamacare yesterday. They didn't repeal anything. They didn't even repeal the most horrible parts of it because the special interests wrote it. And now the elite are realizing, though, that this is going to be a horrible world we're going to live in, that they're destroying the golden goose. The mid-level and even some of the high-level people aren't really bad. They're just greedy mercenaries. And now they're understanding, whoa, this is really an anti-human, exterminist, really wicked, dark program that is coming in. And it's not going to be good for your grandkids. It's not going to be good for you. People 30, 40 years ago said the New World Order will be really bad for your grandkids. Well, 30, 40 years later, people that were 20, 30, 40 years old then have grandkids. And so now it's here. This is the beginning of the season of woe. This is the beginning of the seasons of crises after crises. As the carrying limit of the planet is reached, not because we didn't have a higher carrying limit, but because they artificially cut stuff off, stifled new development and innovation, and are going to try to use the global crisis of the carrying limit being reached to pose as saviors to try to stop the collapse when they are actually orchestrating it and riding this dragon, riding this beast. It is a hellish, dark logic they're using, and we've all got front row seats to it. And folks, we don't want to just have front row seats. We want to get in the arena. And that's where you'll get battle-tested in politics, battle-tested in business, battle-tested in life. That's where you'll learn how everything works. And the whole system is built to arrest your development, keep you in a childlike state. That's why people used to send their kids to apprentice when they were 7 years old. They called it child labor. It had some evils to it. But Paul Watson, thank you so much for joining us. I'm going to continue breaking this down. Anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, just on the economic front, I mean, they're obviously preparing this bubble to inflate it even bigger, to pop it and collapse it, and we're going to see more riots. I mean, for months before Ferguson, I was on here, you were on saying that riots were coming. That took place. They're only going to get bigger. And they're making the bubble, they're inflating it to such an extent. You know, I know people in the UK who needed mortgages for £300,000 and the banks were offering them 600,000, just saying, here, take it, take it. So they're inflating that bubble even more now.
Oh, the inflation is hitting everywhere. Things are getting so expensive. And then what happens when the welfare check comes, but it